Hey, welcome back to a new installment of the Wide Right Podcast. Manny Navarro from The Athletic here with you. As you can see, Carlos Ledo of the MIA All Day Pod is back with us after a week off. Carlos, you and I are busy guys. I've had this crazy schedule, and I've basically had to call Adam Lichtenstein in the early afternoon so I could record because I'm coaching soccer. I'm driving kids to basketball practice, and you and I haven't been able to get on the same page schedule-wise because you and I usually record in the late afternoon. And
And
it's
I'm
just
pretending
that
to be an
time.
attorney during the day, so
Yeah. It's just it's a difficult job, but listen, we got back together now. The Canes play tomorrow night, Friday night, at Hard Rock Stadium against the Virginia Tech Hokies. They're 4
which,
0.
by the way, listen,
Yes.
if you're gonna have a game on a Friday night at Hard Rock Stadium, you know what's down the street is Trash Pal. You gotta have the classic, it's not over till it's over. You gotta
Yes.
have somebody at least echoing those great terms in the stadium. Tackled by big number 15. And you gotta have all those things.
Right. You
But
got to have a little change in
pay a little
the
homage, you know
announcing.
what I'm saying?
Yes. But they are doing it Friday night. ESPN likes those Friday night games. They like getting an ACC team on there at least once a year. And so Miami will host the Hokies, who are 2-2. Didn't look great in their two losses. Haven't looked great really all season with Kyron Jones. I thought it would be a much tougher game for Miami when you and I spoke in the preseason about it. But the Canes are playing well. Offense is really performing well, and they're 17, I think 17 and a half point favorites. The line was originally 19 and a half, which was,
Yeah, I
by the
think
way,
you covered it.
Carlos, by the way, the line 19 and a half that opened, the opening line, according to BetMGM, same number as Miami Georgia Tech line last year.
Don't you
Yeah.
put that juju on me, man. Don't you put that bad juju on me.
Well, listen, we're not going to break down. We don't even need to talk about the Virginia Tech game. There's more than enough questions that we've gotten in from the mailbag that I want you and I to
Spoiler alert,
address.
they're gonna smoke the Hokies.
Yeah, that's the spoiler alert for you.
If you like smoked turkey, show up to the stadium Friday night.
I want to talk about something that's been on my mind as Miami's gotten off to this 4-0 start, and we've seen, and I mentioned Virginia Tech
Yes, Manny.
struggling
I'll
out of the
tell you
gate.
now. I'll answer your question immediately. Yes, now
Yes,
is the time to switch from Florida State to Miami as far as your fandom is concerned.
right,
This is
right.
the right time to do it, to jump ship now, before the Titanic fully sinks in Tallahassee. Now's the time to do it.
Well, I wanted to talk about all of the ACC, Carlos, because now that Miami's actually in contention to win the league title, which would guarantee them a berth into the 12-team playoff, you have to start thinking about, well, what if somehow that doesn't happen, right? What if Miami uh, gets to the ACC title game and doesn't win? You and I had this conversation in the preseason. But now that we're starting to see strength of schedule, we're starting to see which teams are really contenders from the SEC, from the Big Ten, and we've got a little bit more information to work with. I wanted to bring this question back up, and that is, does Miami need to go undefeated in the regular season to guarantee itself a playoff spot? Um, I think in the preseason, you and I said, well, if they get one loss in the regular season, but win the ACC title game, they're guaranteed in. If they lose the
Right.
ACC title game with two losses and they end up with two losses, maybe it's more on the bubble. And I feel like, Carlos, I feel like our preseason conversation is turning out to be true. I do think Miami needs to go undefeated in the
Yeah.
regular season to guarantee themselves a spot. Right now, ESPN projects Miami to go 11-1, gives them an 18.4% shot of finishing 12-0 in the regular season. And I think, one thing we have to take into account here is there may not be a lot of teams on Miami's schedule that become bowl eligible. And their strength of schedule, when you compare it to some of the top SEC teams, top Big Ten teams, hell, even a couple of Big 12 teams, even Notre Dame, right? Those are the teams they would be competing with for an at-large spot in the end. It's very weak. Right now, there's only one ranked opponent on Miami's schedule, and that's Louisville. Everybody else is outside the top 25 in terms of ACC foes. If you look at the projections in the ESPN Power Index, Carlos, and you go through Florida, Ball State, USF, Virginia Tech, Cal, Louisville, Florida State, Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Syracuse. That list, I'm going to count it for you right now. There are one, two, three, four, five, six, seven teams that are given a 50% shot or better to win at least six games and become bowl eligible. If I were to tell you Miami beats one ranked team and seven teams that are bowl eligible. Is that a strong enough case to get it in as an at-large?
With one loss, with one regular season loss and losing the ACC title game, I don't know. I don't think it is. I think there's going to be other teams in the SEC and the Big Ten that probably have a better resume than Miami in terms of their strength of schedule that end up getting in before them. The only saving grace that Miami may have is if the committee decides, well, hey, listen, Cam Ward is having such a spectacular season, he may draw more eyeballs to this game than saying having a mid-tier or a third or fourth ranked SEC or Big Ten team come in here who doesn't have that sort of star power behind them. So I think maybe that would be the saving grace. But other than that, I think from just a comparison of strength of schedule and apples to apples, it probably doesn't work. And I think it also depends on how they lose, right? Like you go on the road and you lose a tough one to Louisville on a last second field goal or in overtime. You lose another tough one to Clemson, maybe in the ACC championship again by a field goal, last second loss, overtime. Then that helps as well. But if you get your ass kicked by Clemson in the ACC title game, or if you have a situation where, yeah, you finish with one loss in the regular season, limp into the championship game against Clemson, and lose Cam Ward going in or during the game, then that also makes a difference. So all those things are factors you got to look at.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And I started to look at the competition, Carlos, because I think it's fair. Like we're almost at the end of September. We're expecting Miami to blow out the Hokies. I think we can officially start turning our attention to things like the Heisman race and the playoff race. Like who else do you need to lose, right? If you're Miami, who are you rooting against? Who are you sort of watching outside of just your own little bubble of Hurricanes football? I'm going to give you some numbers just so that, to educate the fan base, because I know most of you guys do not pay attention to everybody else. Right now, ESPN's Football Power Index projects four SEC teams to win at least 10 games. All right. Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. There's two more teams that are projected to win 9 games. That's Missouri and Georgia. So, look, we know this when it comes to the college football playoff. You've got four guaranteed spots: the SEC champ, the Big 12 champ, the Big 10 champ, the ACC champ, and then you have the group of five. So that basically leaves it's actually five guaranteed spots. So that leaves 7 spots for you to make up. If you have six SEC teams finish with 9 wins or better, and let me tell you, they're going to have many more ranked opponents than Miami will, at least on their schedule. That makes, again, like you really need to have a great season if you're Miami. One loss, like you said, maybe to Louisville on a last second field goal and then getting the ACC title game and losing the clip, maybe that gets you in there. But I think when you look at that and you just look at the projections, it's like, dude, it's going to be tough to finish ahead of those SEC teams. We know the SEC bias already exists, right? Certainly it affected Florida State last year from getting into the playoff, along with the injury, obviously, to their quarterback. But still, the SEC got 2 teams in, or not 2 teams in, but they got their team in ahead of the ACC champ. So I think that's something to worry about. And then I mentioned the Big Ten teams. Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, all projected to win at least 10 games. If you look at Penn State, that could directly be one of those teams you're fighting in at-large berth for. Their schedule, I'm looking at it right now. Penn State's got Illinois and Ohio State in terms of ranked opponents. Um, I'm looking at let's see, Georgia. They've got Alabama. They already beat Clemson, by the way. They've got Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Ole Miss has LSU, Oklahoma, Georgia, all ranked teams on there. Notre Dame, they got Louisville this week. They got USC to end the season. USC's ranked, and even Missouri. They've got Boston. They had Boston College, who was ranked at the time. Texas A&M, Alabama, Oklahoma. All of those are really strong resumes, dude. And so from my perspective, as I did all that research, Carlos, it is going to be nerve-wracking if you're a Hurricanes fan down the stretch.
Yeah, I think the only way the ACC gets 2 teams in is if Miami finishes undefeated in the regular season and loses the ACC title game in a close game,
Right.
or if Clemson loses Miami in a tight one, and they obviously dominate the rest of their schedule, and they lose to a top five Miami team in a real tough battle. That may be the only way the ACC gets 2 teams in. I don't see it happening outside of that.
Yeah, and that's why I think style points matter, right? Like at this point in the season, you think about last week's win at USF, where they blew them out in the second half and absolutely dominated them 50-15. The one thing you can make an argument late in the season, let's say Alabama's a 3-loss team at the end of the year, and Miami's got those 2 losses. Let's say they lose one regular season game and the ACC championship to Clemson, and they're fighting for an at-large berth. When the SEC starts making the argument, well, Alabama played a much tougher schedule than Miami, you can turn around and say something like, well, Miami also kicked USF's ass in the second half, and you guys didn't pull away from USF until there were 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Again, I know we're projecting. I know this is way down the field, and this is a hypothetical. I think we both feel strongly that Miami can definitely win the ACC championship and get their way in there. But I think as a college football fan, somebody who watches all the games on Saturday and tunes in and wants to know who should I be rooting for, who should I be rooting against, I would say definitely root for Miami to go undefeated in the regular season because I think that is really the only way you guarantee yourself a spot.
Yeah, really, this is more than any other season. I think this comes down to Miami taking care of business, right? Because they have no business, honestly. If you look at the schedule, they have no business losing to anyone, even Louisville. I think Louisville will pose maybe the biggest threat to this team during the regular season, but they should be able to handle business against Louisville because I saw the way they looked against Georgia Tech. I don't think they have the firepower on offense that they had a year ago. They don't look as good as they did. I don't think defensively they have enough to keep up with the Hurricanes. I mean, they scored 34 points last week, and seven of that was off scoop and score on a fumble, right? They only scored
Yeah,
27 against Georgia Tech. So I don't know that Louisville can win a shootout against Miami, and I don't know they can get into one with Miami. So we'll see, but I think ultimately it's about the Hurricanes taking care of business, which they should. But then again, this has been the big Achilles heel over the last 20 years, right? Especially since they've been in the
right.
ACC. You get into ACC play, you've got momentum going, and you always shit the bed against the team you shouldn't shit the bed against in conference, or at least a couple teams, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not like they've beaten world beaters to this point, right? The teams that they've beat to this point outside of Miami are giving up against FBS teams 34 and a half points a game. People were talking about Florida's defense. Somebody made a comment on my saying that Florida's had a shit defense, shit run defense, saying that that's stupid. That Florida has big defensive tackles. They're really good. They gave up 338 yards, I think, against Texas A&M rushing.
Yeah.
Sucks. They gave up over 200 yards rushing against Mississippi State. That's not a good run defense, guys. So right now, Miami has yet to play a defense that's on their level. I don't know if they're going to face one maybe during the regular season that's on their level offensively. Louisville again might be the closest shot, and watch out. They may have a top 25 team that you weren't expecting on the schedule at the end of the year in the Duke Blue Devils.
Look, Duke's 4-0 right now. They've actually got an 89.7% chance of getting to 6 wins and being bowl eligible. If you look
Manny,
at
they
if you
got North Carolina next, who is awful, who just got destroyed, who just got Manny Diaz by
right,
James Madison. James
well,
Madison, and it's not even the president. At least that dude had some history behind him. The actual school, James Madison. They should be rolling into Georgia Tech undefeated. Maybe they beat Georgia Tech. Then they roll into Florida State. Then they've got SMU, and then they got Miami. If they're a one-loss team coming into that Miami game, man, that's gonna be interesting.
yeah, we'll see if Duke ends up getting ranked. Right now, they're one of only two unbeaten teams, 4-0. Them and Rutgers that didn't get a single vote in the AP poll, even though they're undefeated. So we'll see what happens if Duke can somehow make a stronger case for themselves. I will say this, Carlos, two teams that you want to see do well as the season progresses after Miami plays them or before Miami plays them are Virginia Tech and Syracuse. Both of them are 50 Virginia Tech has a 55% chance right now according to the math of becoming bowl eligible. So they've got a tough schedule down the road. 38th toughest according to ESPN, and Syracuse they've only got a 51% chance. So again, you talk about resume and if you only get caught in that scenario, Carlos. And again, I know most Miami fans don't want to think about these things. We're going to win the ACC. We're going to go undefeated. What are you talking about, Manny? You're a big freaking idiot. No, you need to go over some of these hypotheticals because I think it's a storyline that in the background, if Miami stubs their toe for whatever reason, you got to be thinking like, okay, well, what happens now? What if they lose one regular season game? Will they get in? How much of an argument? How much do they need to blow guys out every single week just to sort of re-emphasize that they're a great team? And I think, if Mario Cristobal needs motivation, I hope he plays this little segment for his team and they hear this because I do fear that one loss will keep them out of the playoff if they lose the ACC championship game.
Yeah, you're gonna want certain teams to finish their schedule, just rolling through the schedule, except for the Miami game. You want them to win the rest of their games. Like Florida State is one.
Hmm.
You want them to bounce back. And as much as that sucks to say, and as much as you guys want to see Florida State lose every game, you need Florida State to start getting on a roll and winning games and finishing 8-4. right? To make your schedule look tougher. You want Louisville to win every game outside of the Miami game. You want Cal to do that. You want Duke to do that. You want Georgia Tech and Syracuse to do that because that'll elevate the profile of the Hurricanes. And should they drop one with a team they shouldn't, obviously the rest of the schedule they shouldn't, then they've got sort of that backup to say, look, we actually played a much tougher schedule than people anticipate.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I want to dive into the mailbag questions. At least we started the show with the topic I definitely wanted to discuss because it has been in the back of my mind. Let's jump into these questions. This one's from To a Believer. Ginger Man Cannon did is his
I think your belief
screen.
needs to be shifted, my man.
Manny, you're always spot on with your eye test. Those who doubt it, heck with them. What does your eye test say about the O line? To me, they look like they're the size that they should be. Before Mario Cristobal, they always look small. But what do you see with the run game and why it's been underwhelming? Carlos, my opinion on the running game, and I think several people have asked about this. My opinion is teams are stacking the box. USF certainly did that. They sort of challenged Cam Ward to try to beat them in
Stupid.
man coverage, which was really dumb. But I also think they haven't completely come out in the running game and just shoved it down the other team's throat either. Like there's certainly been some matchups. And again, this is a team averaging 200 yards a game on the ground right now, Carlos. So the
That's a little
numbers,
deceiving, though.
yeah, it is deceiving. And I say this in the sense of it feels like Shannon Dawson hasn't given it as much emphasis early in games when the game has been on the line. He's just relied on Cam Ward to make those passes. I don't think the offensive line is bad. I just think they're missing Jalen Rivers at left tackle. And I think, if you look at the new center and the left guard, I don't know that they're as good as their predecessors in run blocking.
I would agree to that with that to a certain extent. I think they have tried to run the ball. They've established a trend in the first half, and it's been shut down. I mean, they had 16 yards rushing in the first half against Ball State. They had a bunch of attempts. They had about 40 yards rushing in the half last week, and they had a bunch of attempts. They really didn't break out and have supposedly a good running day until Lyle had that 91-yard run, because up until that point, Cam Ward was the leading rusher on the team for the game. I think what you're seeing is a situation where, like you're saying, I don't think they're good in terms of run blocking, like not as good as they were last year. I think left guard is unsettled. I don't think Matthew McCoy is as good as Javian Cohen was run blocking. I don't think Zach Carpenter, although his PFF grade is okay in terms of the run blocking. Let's look at here. It's a 69, which is not great, but it's okay in terms of run blocking. The rest of the offensive line isn't very much better. Francis Manoa, I think, is the best run blocker. Let's see here in terms of numbers. No, he's below Carpenter, so Carpenter's probably the best one. I think the other issue is Inez Cooper is also not doing as well as we anticipated in terms of the run game, run blocking. I don't see them pulling as much as they did a season ago with their guards. They definitely don't pull the center like they used to with Matt Lee. Matt Lee used to get out and pull around the edge and lead block on a lot of outside runs when they were doing power schemes. So I think that's part of the factor. I think they're having to rely on more sort of gap and inside zone schemes than without the pulling in the power game, and that's having an effect because they're just not, I don't think, as athletic as they used to be on the offensive line. I don't think Bell at tackle is very athletic in terms of being able to move and pull. He's good at pass blocking, but he's still developing there as well. I just think overall they're not as athletic up front. They're not big, and they're not able to impose their will. Like there's another question that we'll get to later in the mailbag that I think discusses. Is the young lady asked, are they just taking what the defense gives them, and is it a factor of how the defense is playing Miami in the run game to try and stop that? And I think it is to a certain extent. They're loading the box, but when you're a good running team, when you have bullies up front, you're able to overcome that, and you're also able to push through that and get your yards on the ground and establish a run game and
Yeah.
physically outplay people like they did against Clemson last year. Clemson knew the run game was coming. They had nothing in terms of throwing the football, but Miami dominated them up front and still forced their will upon Clemson at the line of scrimmage. They're not able to do that thus far this season. I think the other factor is, and I think this relates a little bit to in terms of how they're calling the games and how they're relying on Cam Ward, is they're not using the tight end as much in the run game. You're
Hmm.
seeing, Cam McCormick's snaps have been limited this season. He's not playing as much as he did a season ago, and I think that's because they want to get more playmakers on the field with Cam Ward. So to date, Cam McCormick only has 36 run blocking snaps in 4 games, which is not a whole lot. He probably had that in 2 games last year or more than that. So I think what you're seeing is their personnel groupings are not lending themselves as well as they used to a season ago for the run game. That's a factor of it. So they've got to figure out how to do it with Elijah Arroyo on the field. He's got to be able to run block, and they got to use those 5 guys up front to bully ball.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. Very well researched. I'm going to throw some numbers at you in terms of the listening audience. And look, Pro Football Focus does a good job tracking what they call rushing by direction, meaning who they run behind,
Yep.
to have success. Right now, the worst numbers, believe it or not, are around the right side, right tackle and right end, which is basically in between the right guard and right tackle, and around the right tackle on the right side of him. Miami's only averaging 3.1 yards a carry when they run around Francis Mauino's side. Now again, they've only had seven attempts through the right side, so it's among the fewest. Same thing with left tackle, 4.5 yards a carry, where they've had some of the bigger success is actually between center and left guard, 7.4 yards a carry. Some of those are explosive runs too that kind of help pad the numbers. But ultimately, like you said, it's more about timing. It's more about when those runs happen. We saw
Yeah.
obviously, Jordan Lyles' 91-yard touchdown run. Of course, that's at the end of a 40. That's with the score being 43-15 in the fourth quarter and both teams taking guys out. So
Yeah, and against Ball State, they got a bunch of carries, they got a bunch of yards in late in the third and the fourth quarter
yeah,
when Ball State had subbed themselves. Their
right,
starters sucked. They brought in even worse guys in the second unit, and
right.
Miami was just fresh and beating them up in that fourth quarter, running the football. And to my point, I'll look at Elijah Arroyo's run blocking grade right now. It's a 53.8, and that I think makes a huge difference as compared to Cam McCormick's, who's a 67.1.
Right, right. All right, let's get to the next question. This is Joey Inza on Twitter says, Josh Pate called Miami a high-level SEC team. Where would Miami finish in the SEC this season? Would they still be a playoff contending team? It's a great question. I think one thing you need to take into account when you think about, well, if Miami was in the SEC, would they be doing this? Um, Playing an SEC schedule from beginning to end is a lot tougher than
Yeah.
playing an ACC schedule physically, the physical demands, the injuries, etc. Um, could Miami score on a lot of these SEC teams? I think without question. I think Cam Ward's ability, his receivers' ability, I think they could put up really good numbers and be competitive in the SEC. Would I say Miami's the favorite to win it? I don't think so. I think Tennessee right now is playing at a really, really high level. I think Miami and Tennessee are actually very, very similar. I think Miami's got the better quarterback of the two. But I think in terms of defensive line play, Tennessee and Miami are playing at a very high elite level. If you were to put Ruben Bain back into the lineup for Miami, which he's supposed to be tomorrow night against Virginia Tech, I think it's just as good as Tennessee's defensive line, if not better, with some individual performances. So I think in terms of Alabama, Georgia, I still think those are deeper teams. Especially at certain positions, but Georgia's offense not as explosive as Miami's, especially in the passing game. They don't have the receivers. Colby Young hasn't gone over there and blown up. I think you look at
Well, I think
Alabama.
part of that is because Carson Beck looks like Machine Gun Kelly's broke younger brother, and that's why they struggle in the passing game.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think Miami wouldn't. I think the lack of depth in the overall roster and the overall completeness of the roster. I think
Hmm.
Miami's frontline talent is great and can hang with any ACC team and compete. But when you
Right.
factor in injuries and having to step up to the next guy, I think that's where the SEC separates itself because, like you're saying, it's a gauntlet. You have to play teams like Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Ole Miss week to week, and you've got to battle these teams, and you're going to have injuries. Guys are going to go down. You're going to have to go back to the next guy on the roster. And I don't know that Miami has that sort of a roster yet that's complete enough to sustain that for a full season and be able to compete at that level.
I would fire this question back. If Miami had to play Clemson in the opener, like Georgia did, uh, at Alabama this weekend, at Texas on October 19th, at Ole Miss November 9th, and then home versus Tennessee November 16th, how do you think they would do, Carlos? If they
I
had
don't.
Georgia's schedule?
They wouldn't be undefeated.
There's no way. Georgia's not going to go undefeated. Georgia's probably going to lose two or three games with that schedule. It's difficult. It's tough to maneuver. So I think while you can have a lot of confidence and be very proud of what Mario Cristobal has done for Miami, and they are an SEC caliber team from an offensive explosiveness and defensive line type play, I don't think that you can sit here with a
So
straight face and
let's just
say,
look at some basic holes on the team, right? I think like we're talking about, they're not able to run the football well right now. And I guess
hmm
when you're playing against SEC caliber defenses, they're going to find a way, especially those coordinators, because they're very highly paid
Right.
coordinators, are going to figure out a way to sort of slow down that passing game. If I was a coordinator, right, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm playing the Miami Hurricanes and Cam Ward, what I'm trying to do is I'm making you run the football.
Yep.
I'm playing you, I'm dropping eight back, I'm zone blitzing, I'm dropping tackles and ends, and I'm trying to confuse Cam Ward's reads and his windows and making Miami say, okay, we've got a 3, 4 man box. We've got to run the football. That's the advantage. And then that's how I want you to play me because it's
Yep.
going to take a hell of a lot longer for you to get down the field and score on me by running the football than it is by Cam Ward sitting back there and picking me apart, right? So I'm trying to do that. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not letting Cam Ward beat me, or I'm trying to find a way to mitigate the damage that Cam Ward can do to me and forcing you to use your run game to beat me. The second thing is Miami's secondary, like we thought coming into the season, has holes. They had a guy who basically looks like Wes Welker and Danny Amendola's love child go off on them this past game against USF. So they've got an issue covering the slot. Dayani Hill had a bad game. He was eaten up by whoever he was covering, which was mostly the Welker love child. So I think it's an issue there in the secondary. I think, yeah, Mish Powell looks good. They've got some guys that flash, but I think they still have issues in that secondary that are
Right.
going to be taking advantage of it. There's a team that can actually pass block for the quarterback.
Yeah, they haven't faced a team yet that can throw the football effectively. Like USF, they had, like you said, a decent slot receiver, but there was nobody on the outside that was going to
No.
beat them down the field. There was nobody, even in the running game, beyond, their quarterback who was really effective.
And they
So,
still scored 4 times in the first half. Although
right.
there were field goals, they scored 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, I think Miami would probably be a 9 or 10 win team in the SEC this year. Which, you know what? If they're a 9 or 10 win team, then they're fighting for a playoff spot. So I do think they're
Yeah.
a legitimate playoff threat, even if they were in the SEC. All right, this is from Jessica JK Miami 89. She wants to know how good is Restrepo? Can you talk about how good his blocking is? I've never seen a slot guy block the way he does. He's taking out multiple guys on these plays. It is wild and needs more attention. What do you think of Restrepo as a blocker?
He's really good. I think Braxton Berrios was a very good slot blocker as well. He blocked his ass
Hmm.
off when he was here in Miami as well.
Right.
I think Restrepo is just an all-around dog, man. I think that's who he is. That's his makeup. Whatever he's doing, whether he's catching the ball, he's running routes and not getting the football, and he's blocking, he's doing it at 100% at all times, and that's who he is. That kid gives his heart to this program, to the point that it's something as simple as look at that kid's picture when he comes up and they're introducing him. That thing he has on his face, the reason he has that is because he has an allergic reaction to the helmet that he puts on every week, right? That's why he's got that issue with his face, I believe. That's the reason. It's the contact, the helmet, that's causing that. And he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. That kid goes out there and gives it 100%. Most kids that age, I'd be like, dude, I can't put this helmet on. I can't look like this. I got to get girls. Like, what am I doing? Why am I looking like this? He doesn't care. He's about ball. He's about doing what it takes to win. That kid had offers from Georgetown. He could have gone to Harvard, Yale, Ivy League schools to go play football. He decided to go to the University of Miami because he wanted to be a Hurricane. That's the kind of kid that Xavier Restrepo is. And he's turned himself into the best slot receiver in the country, I would say, if not one of the best. And it's
Yeah.
amazing to watch. And I think also Kevin Beard is doing a great job with the receivers in terms of how they block overall. It's not just Restrepo. That's expected because he's a dog. But Sam Brown, he had his issues catching the football and making plays up until his last game, but his run block grade is an 86.7. So they're getting after it, man. Those receivers are getting after it, and that's a testament to Kevin Beard.
It is. Look, again, blocking is effort. Blocking is about passion, like you said. I think that's why Restrepo is good at it. He
And I
plays with that
liken
all the
it
time.
to in basketball. It's like defense and rebounding. That's effort based.
Yep. This question is from Larry Shender, Miami Media Associates, a longtime listener and commenter. What are your thoughts about getting AJ Allen and Jordan Lyle more carries in the first half? Seems like both of them have earned meaningful carries.
I agree. I think Damian Martinez to date has been a little bit disappointing in terms of the way he's run the football. Now, is that a factor of the offensive line not opening up holes? I know some people have mentioned in the comments, and I mentioned a couple episodes ago that it looks like he's hesitating. It looks like they're almost running a slow mesh type with Damian Martinez type of run.
Hmm.
I don't know if they used to run that at Oregon State, and that Shannon Dawson, that's one of the things he's tried to incorporate into the offense to try and help Damian Martinez feel at home and feel comfortable, but that shit's not working. They've got to be able to hit the hole and hit it hard, make a one cut decision and make a move. And that's what you're seeing from an AJ Allen. AJ Allen's not hesitating. He's finding a gap. He's putting his foot in the ground. He's putting his head down and he's going. Same thing with Jordan Lyle. Same thing with Mark Fletcher. You're seeing those guys really make decisive moves and go and attack the line of scrimmage as opposed to what Damian Martinez is doing thus far.
Right now, Jordan Lyle leads the team in rushing 233 yards. Obviously had the 91-yard touchdown run to help pad those stats, but he is second in carries behind Damian Martinez. Martinez has 40 for 190. Next is Mark Fletcher, 21 carries, 120 yards. And AJ Allen fourth with 17 attempts for 143 yards. So they've spread the love around so far through these first four games. I'm interested to see if they kind of just ride one or two guys when they get in some closer games, when teams
I
are.
don't think you need to because I think every
No,
guy brings something different, and
right.
it's keeping backs fresh. And when your offensive line is struggling to create holes in the run game, using different styles and different guys, you'll find the guy that's going to pop. You'll find the hot hand and the guy that
Yeah.
matches what you're doing and what's going on during that game, and that's the guy you ride in each individual game.
This is from Jessica again, JK Miami 89. How much of the struggles of the run game are because of defensive scheme against us? I'm not worried with the way Cam has still been able to orchestrate 10 plus play drives, taking a ton of time off the clock. I think we're just taking what the defense is giving us. Um,
Yeah, it's the question I addressed earlier. Jessica, two great questions.
yeah, I would just say I'm not worried about it either. As long as they keep putting up over 50 points a game, it doesn't
Right. I'm
matter.
not worried about it now.
Right.
Down the road, it may be a little bit concerning. There's going to be a time, obviously, listen, every team runs into a game where just shit doesn't go right.
Yeah.
When your best guys don't play their best, Cam Ward may have a game where he looks human. It happens. He's looked human the last couple of games at points, right?
Hmm.
Against Ball State, against South Florida, he's had moments where he's looked off, where he hasn't been on target 100%. If he goes through a game where there's a long stretch of that, you're going to have to rely on the running game. And that's where it's going to become obvious and evident that they're not able to open up holes. But
Yeah.
hopefully it doesn't get to that point, or they make the necessary adjustments to get the run game going.
All right, we got a ton more questions here. I put out two call outs for them, so we will try to get to as many of them
We'll get to all of them,
as
Manny.
possible.
We'll get to all of them.
This is Zeza Kane. He says, "Who do we call and complain to about a 10:30 kickoff time?" Of course, he's referring to Miami's game at Cal in a couple of weeks. Here's what I would tell you, Zeza Kane: make sure you get some a good nap in on Saturday before that game. I don't know if maybe 4 or 5 o'clock. You go back to bed for a couple of hours, then you get up, you take some Cuban coffee, and then you get ready to watch some late night football.
Is it a coincidence or a conspiracy that that game is sponsored by Café Bustelo?
It could very well be coincidence, Carlos. Coincidence.
Yeah, I think there.
Um, this is from Veconomics. What are the updated expectations for the team? ACC title, getting to the playoff final, undefeated regular season. This team looks very good. What are your expectations? Anything different from your preseason? You told me they could go 10-2, right? I think that's what your preseason expectation. Have
Yeah,
you changed it?
I think worst case could be 11-1. That's my. I think the reason why I'm adjusting is because I think Florida State's a lot worse than I anticipated coming into the season.
Hmm.
I think Georgia Tech's okay. I don't think they're as good as I thought they were going to be. So I think those adjustments are warranted. I think 11-1 at worst. They should finish undefeated in the regular season, but I think 11-1 at worst.
I predicted them to win the ACC title, and I think at the time you were looking at me like if I was
No,
had my
Manny,
brain.
I said I agreed, but I was shocked that you, as a Florida State fan, were going that route and that you were trying to gain favor with everybody else by saying,
I was not. I was serious about their chances. I thought, I made the decision. I broke things down. I said, I think they're going to do it this year. So, all right. This is TJ Adams, 954 says, who would you drop in PPR? Oh God, fantasy football question. All right, we'll skip that one. Stop. This is from Stop Cop City. Do you think a 10-2 or 10-3 with a loss in the ACC Championship game makes the playoff at large? We talked about that already.
"Yep,
Stop Cop.
stop,
Bledsoe.
drop, shut them down, open up shop."
Yeah, Bloodsoe McCarrigan, Bloodsoe J on Twitter. What would y'all say is the best position group on the team right now relative to expectations?
Defensive line, I think, is the best. I think Barron is a lot better than I anticipated, and
Hmm.
and surprisingly, so is Austin. I think Austin and Barron might be the best defensive combo in the country, and that's without even Ruben Bain being in there. I think they're that good.
They've been very good to this point, for sure. Hurricane Andrew says, question for Carlos. It seems to me that our opponents are stacking the box and playing a ton of man. Do you think this is why our running game has left a lot to be desired? Do you think that's the primary reason, or do you just think it's execution or a combination?
I think it's execution and lack of not being as good in the run game as a year ago, because there were times a year ago where the run box was stacked and they were moving people around.
Right.
So I think it's a factor of that. It's also a factor of, hey, listen, when you got a dude that can put up points like Cam Ward, if they're gonna play man with Cam Ward and he could dance back there and find a guy until he breaks open, What are you gonna do? You
Right.
know, it's like saying, "What? I'm not gonna let Jordan shoot the ball 40 times a game."
Right.
Seriously?
Yeah. Brent Peterson, B Pete 9121. Which Miami team does this one most remind you of? To me, it seems a lot like those early 90s teams.
You know what? I was thinking about this yesterday. I think, and this is not, I'm not saying it's going to be the same result, but I'm saying this team reminds me a lot of the 2020 Hurricanes with De'Aaron King, where De'Aaron King was doing it all.
Right.
Because that's what I see Cam Ward doing. He's doing it all because they're not running the ball effectively, and it's him back there in the pocket making moves, either throwing the ball down the field or making moves with his legs, like you saw his past game. So I think it's a lot like that 2020 team in terms of how that offense is looking. I think the defense. I don't know who to compare them to because they've got a great defensive line. They're just a little bit of that back end scares me, man. That back end still scares me.
Okay. You're the hater now. It's unbelievable. People are going to
I'm
be
just
like,
yeah, it's
Carlos.
I'm you know why? Because I've been off for a week and I was pissed off that I wasn't on the show, so I'm coming out, I'm guns blazing, and I'm blaming the fans. I'm taking it out on them.
All right. This is from Von Kane. In a season swimming in good vibes, there still is concern the run game needs work. I'm telling you, the run game is popular conversation. I'm
Really?
starting.
You know what, Manny? That's interesting considering that I brought it up like 3 weeks ago and was
Yeah.
talking about it and everybody was shitting on me for it. So you know what, guys? Kiss my ass.
All right. This is Von Kane. I'm starting to
I love
believe
Von Kane though.
I'm starting to believe this is a result of Mario actually installing a more air raid friendly system to suit Ward's talents, but would like your and Carlos's insights. What do you think it has anything to do with that? Just trying to
I,
be more of a passing team from the
I think it
get-go?
is. I think it's a factor of like I said, they're not getting Cam McCormick on the field as much. So they're missing essentially another offensive lineman. And Arroyo's not as great run blocking. I
Right.
think they're playing into Cam Ward's strengths, which is, more personnel groupings that offer 3 and 4 wide receivers. Evolving Elijah Arroyo more in the passing game, which we talked about a year ago they needed to do. Using the running backs more in the passing game, which we talked about a year ago they needed to do. So I think they're really trying to play into Cam Ward's hands and use his talent to maximize it in the passing game. Because, like I said, if you got Jordan, why not put it up 40 times a game?
Yep. I agree. All right. This is Miami Hurricanes enthusiast. Chances we compete for the Natty. Carlos, are you ready to make the leap and say this is a team that gets to the championship game?
I don't think so. I still think they have too many holes in that back end and the secondary. I still think they're going to need to be able to run the ball a lot better. I don't know if they faced a challenge yet from a team on defense that will put them in a position where they need to, where Cam Ward will look human. Um,
Right.
or maybe he doesn't look human. Maybe that's who he is, but I think he hasn't really faced a challenge yet. And you could tell by the fact that when he scrambles, he's just pointing at guys and holding the ball behind them and doing shit like that. When he faces a real defense, he's not going to be able to do all that kind of stuff.
Well,
I don't know that there's one on the schedule.
right. That's the problem. They may not see them till the ACC championship game. And in both regards, I think this defense still hasn't seen a real quarterback, somebody
Right.
with a real passing game.
I agree.
So we don't know. I think we may not know until the very end. Um, all right. This is Michael Bonasar. Seeing as UF was seemingly the toughest team Miami's played so far, where would you rank them compared to the rest of the teams left on the schedule?
UF?
There
I think
probably
UF is like
is.
a 4 or 5 win team.
No, he said USF. USF.
Oh,
South.
oh, USF, USF.
Yeah.
Um,
I think they're a 7-win team or an 8-win team in their conference with the schedule that they have. I would say they're probably the sixth or seventh toughest team Miami has on the schedule overall.
yeah. What are they now? They are 2-2. What's on them remaining on their schedule? Let's take a look at their schedule. So coming up, USF has Tulane. That'll be tough. Memphis, that's tough. They should beat UAB and Florida Atlantic, Navy, Charlotte. I think they'll end up like 7-5,
Yeah.
84.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be a bowl eligible team. In fact,
Yeah,
ESPN gives them an 84% chance of getting to at least 6 wins. So I would say if you were to stick USF in the ACC, they're probably middle of the road. They're probably ninth or 10th best team in the ACC. But, what do I know? Health and so much of that ends up
yeah.
making that decision for you. This is from Vic Vassell. Does Miami have a 100-yard rusher this game? I am going to say no because I think they spread it around. And I think Virginia Tech, as bad as they've been against the run most of this season, and they were bad, they got their act together against Rutgers last game and they shut down. They don't want to say shut down, but they didn't allow Kyle McGonaghy to run all over them. So I think no, I would not put money on a Miami running back eclipsing 100 yards. All right, Rodney King. Are we ready to admit this is the best O-line and D-line combination at Miami since 2002?
No, not even close.
Any reason why?
That offensive line is not anywhere near other offensive lines they have, and the defensive line is really good, yeah. But I think the combo, the
Hmm.
two of them together, no.
Right. Right. I would say they had a better offensive line last year, and they have a
Yep,
better defensive line this year.
yep.
How many
I think
things?
the combo, the total combo between the two last year was better.
Okay. Armando Izagirre, AY2 Mondo. How many things would have to go wrong in a particular game for Miami to lose any ACC game other than Louisville? I mean, I think turnovers certainly. If
Yep.
they have two or three turnovers, and
Injuries,
injuries to Kiko Mauinoa, injuries to
Cam
uh
Ward.
Mish Powell, any of those guys that are irreplaceable, you know. Um, all right, this is from King Reezy. More and more players will be redshirting due to feeling increased NIL value. The NCAA is a mess, and states have no idea how to separate college football from the pros. Why not just be semi-pro at this point? Well, Reezy, because the NFL is not going to allow that to happen. They there will be hell before it becomes that. From the NFL's perspective. B, I think when you look at some of the struggles of that certain teams have, you don't have equal revenue sharing, right? Like there's no college football is all about how much money you can raise, so it's never going to be what the NFL is.
Not only that, but I think it's more costly and more there's more liability taken on by the university if they are semi-pro. That means they have to be employees of the university, which
Hmm.
means they need to get benefits, which means they need to be under workmen's compensation rules and laws. They need to earn a specific minimum salary if they're, non-exempt employees. There's a lot that goes into it. They need to be offered benefits through the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. There's a lot of things that go into it that are more than just compensation, right? There's the benefits end, there's the liability end. They're treated as employees. They're going to have 401ks. They're going to have different things that other employees within the university are offered as well, which makes things a little complicated.
Yep. All right, couple left here, Carlos. Tony Tone, 73. I'm going out to the game next week in Cali. What's the best way to connect with fellow Canes fans? I've got to work out there on Monday, so why not fly out early and see the U and West Coast action? Well, Tony, first of all, there's a great community of Canes fans that go on the road and do road trips together all the time. You can find them in the parking lot really early. They will be there in huge groups together. Uh, get to the game early and walk around the stadium. There will be and you and search Twitter and Facebook and different places. They post a lot of their information out there advertising, hey, who's going to Cali, type of thing, and they will be out there
Oh,
for the
give his
game.
handle out so people can reach out to him, whoever's going to the game.
Yeah, Tony Tone 73 on Twitter. Make sure you guys reach out to him. He wants to make sure that he hooks up with some Canes
And,
fans
and
out
Tony
there.
Tone says he's got 5 on it in Cali.
All right, this question is from Mike Jones, Jonesy713. For a first timer, is Flanagan's worth a try or nah? What do you say, Carlos?
Listen, bro, it's you have to go to Flanigan's. It's an institution here. I would recommend not going to the one near me, which is a Hialeah one. That turns into a shit show. Although, really, at a certain hour, all Flanagans are a shit show, and that's part of the charm. Um, if you like sports bars, if you like a place to hang out and just have some beer and some good food, it's not gonna be great. It's not gonna be. It's not gonna blow your mind. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna satisfy your hunger, especially if you're, got the munchies after eating and after drinking all day and partying all day. It's a great spot, man. Manny, what is your go-to? I know your answer because you've told me many a time you rave about it. Give me your go-to order at Flanagan's.
Well, listen, I'm obviously a fan of the Rock and Rib Rolls. I'm obviously a fan of the wings. I like what they've got there, but for me, it's all about the mahi that they
The
have.
Dolphin Francaise, baby.
The Dolphin Francais. If you get the Dolphin Francais, you are going to be a very happy man. Super buttery, super fatty, all that kind of stuff. But if you want some good fish, that's the place to get it.
I like that order. I like the Dolphin restaurant. I'm a clam chowder guy. Flanagan's happens to be one of my favorite clam chowders.
Hmm.
Listen, if you go in there and you get the nachos with some beer with some pitchers, that's a great way to go. Wing it Wednesday. If you go there on a Wednesday, free wings, free 10 free wings with a pitcher of beer. Can't go wrong with that.
Yep.
Mondays, Mexican Mondays is the one where you get the nachos with the pitcher of beer. Listen, I haven't done this in a while, but I know the menu still. Thursday to Sunday, you got Joe's Meal Deals. Can't go wrong with that. So I love the clam chowder. My wife is a big fan of either the chicken Philly or the ribs.
Hmm.
I like, the tuna hoagie. Man, that shit is fantastic. You can't go wrong with the tuna hoagie. I love the mahi also. That Dolphin Francais is fantastic.
I think Flanagan's owes us a free meal for all this advertising, by the way. I wonder if that's if he's
Shit.
really a Flanagan's manager or something. Maybe we got a hook up there, bro.
Listen, bro, if there's anybody that works for Flanagan's and wants us to do a live podcast from Flanagan's as we stuff our face and
Yes.
pound beers, and you want to comp us, I'm all in, baby.
All
I'll even go
right.
to the Hialeah one for that one.
All right, Carlos, thanks for coming on. Guys, make sure you tune into the Canes game tomorrow, 7:30 on ESPN. A lot of good football on Saturday, including Alabama, Georgia. If you had to put 100 bucks on one team for Alabama, Georgia, who is it?
I've got to go with Alabama because I refuse to bet on Machine Gun Kelly's broke younger brother.
I'm going with Georgia this weekend by a field goal. We'll see who wins. All right, Carlos, thanks for coming on. As usual, we will see you guys next week.
Peace.